And I was not planning to do a video today at all. I've been busy and life is just kind of busy right now. I'm still reading and studying, and I have a bunch of things in my mind that I want to share with you at some point. But I was scrolling to Twitter. Surprisingly enough, Twitter is not one of those things that go through a lot. I will scroll sometimes if I'm waiting on something or whatever. So, because it can be a little toxic, but I do have some people that I follow on Twitter that I'm interested in making sure that I know what they're doing and all of that. All that to say is Beth More is up again in the news of the Twitter sphere, and people are really mad at her. And I mean, obviously she has a knack for getting under people's skins. But okay, I don't watch her preaching. I don't watch the things she says. I have not read her books. She's not my cup of tea. Okay, but for everybody there's somebody, right? So she has a large audience and she has people that respect her, and respect is one of those things that we give. And so she stood up for herself. Okay. I find her, I did watch one of her self sermons one time and it was just funny and delightful. Okay. But like I said, not my cup of tea necessarily. Anyways, she stood up for herself when she was at the SBA, the Southern Baptist Convention, because she had preached to a group of a mixed audience. Now, if you're an evangelical Christian and you think that Beth Moore shouldn't be preaching because she's a woman, you really need to study the Bible. I'm not talking about reading. I'm not talking about your 15 minutes every day. I'm not talking about every day reading over and over again. That is the start. But you must study, okay? Not only in its own biblical context, but the historical context. And I am going to link a few resources for you because this is not a conversation we should be having anymore. We're past that. Okay. If you the scholarship out there regarding the Bible and women in ministry and stuff like that, we should be beyond that already. Okay, that is no longer a question in my mind and in the mind of a lot of people. Okay, so but there is a problem with her what she did. Okay, and so let's see if she took down the tweet. That happens sometimes. Okay, so it's here, right? So let me share my screen with you and we'll go over her tweet real quick. You got to share. Let's see, we can do it this way. Yep, okay. That should be okay, I think. All right, so she says, um, speaking about the day before, I think it was yes, no, the weekend was Pentecost, right? Sunday. Anyways, she says, I have never passed. I follow her on Twitter, and this showed up on my tweet, so I didn't think anything of it. And so what she says here, it says, I've never pastored a church, could not pay me $1 jillion to. And I understand that because let me tell you something. There is no way one person, one man or woman can be a spiritual leader for thousands of people, even tens of people. Okay, that is impossible and is hubris. Anyways, at least she is. I would say she's humble enough to understand that. And then she says, never been ordained, had no desire to. The only paid staff position I ever held in a church was an aerobics teacher in our church gym. But how in heaven's name a woman discussing a sermon on a podcast could be objectionable to some is beyond me, and what I believe to be beyond scripture. You have no idea what I'm talking about. Good, stay sane. If you do, I've lived a long time, and this has been my observation. Extremism, whether in conservatism or liberalism, whether in politics or religion, is never satisfied. It will always inch a little bit further. It is a constant test of the purest. Now, her definition of someone ordained or a pastor and stuff like that is very, very narrow right here. But in fact, the fact is that she does have biblical studies that are aimed to help you live your life better. In so fact that she is making herself the spiritual leader of a lot of women and maybe some men. I'm not saying whatever, but she's narrowing it too much and make it very simplistic. I wasn't the woman in question here. I don't just care about these matters when I'm on the one at the center of the conversation. So she's talking about some hullabaloo that showed up because she was on a podcast. Okay. Well, I found this one and it wasn't a podcast. She was preaching at a long time ago, it seems like Mother's Day 2021, at Josh Hawthorne's Lake Point Church. Okay, 20, what is that, 5 years ago? Okay, now this woman here, what's her name? Amy something? Every time a woman throws another woman under the bus, it's a problem, especially a Christian woman. Anyways, so she's mad because, in her mind, Beth More is being disingenuous because she's talking about a podcast and she says, no, she actually preached to men and all of that, yada, yada, yada. Okay. So that is, you know, like I said, I'll put resources for you to look at, videos and some books and a video I've made about women in ministry. It's a long conversation, and if you're dead set that women are not allowed to do preach and teach or anything like that, we can't even begin to talk. So here's the problem. Is she preaching here? It looks like it. Okay. She has preached to a mixed congregation, and I don't have a problem with that. You know what I have a problem with? Is the church she preached at. Okay. This gentleman, Josh Hawthorne, okay, from Lake Point Church. Just Google the name, Google the controversies. He is one of the worst out there. Okay, talking about men are have uncontrollable desires and why women should wear modest clothing because men can't control themselves and you're gonna make them sin and I mean dumb dumb thing after another dumb thing after another dumb thing, making women responsible for the urges of men, which is so unbiblical. It is incorrect. We are all responsible for our own behavior. Okay. And whatever. But the point is, I find the Bev Moore's choice of venue a little unsettling because the gentleman, the church that she went to in 2021, obviously, and this is not new. Okay, this guy has been who he has been for as long as that. Unsettling because this is a man that pastors a church who made fun of a woman, and if you just Google it, that was recent too. They made fun of a woman with a genetic disorder that made her limp and had all this stuff, okay? Making fun of people with disabilities, making this horrible culture of the purity culture in the Christian church a terrible thing. He is a terrible pastor, a terrible preacher, and he's part of the patriarchal purity culture that makes women turns women into objects and sets them up for abusive marriages. Okay. And that right there, to me, is the problem with Beth Moore being in contact with this person. It is her, it's not that she's preaching. By all means, do that. I have no problem with that. If we can sit, if you mind reading whatever, you'll see that if you have an open mind, you'll see that that has nothing to do with anything. She's free to preach anywhere. Her choice of venue is a problem. Her choice of pastors is a problem. Her choice of message regarding that the choice, her choice gives you a message. And the message is, I agree with this guy. Yeah, I go to his church and I agree that all the things that he says about men and women, the abusive relationships that that causes for women, I'm okay with that. Okay, so choose your venue. If I had a piece of advice from Miss Beth More, would be choose your venue better and maybe study a little more. So you don't have to run around justifying yourself. If you she did give a message one time saying, Jesus called me, and so I'm going to answer the call. I have no problem with that. But you can't just say, I am going to be preaching to both men and women because Jesus called me, even though in my understanding, I believe that women are not allowed to teach. I have no problem with that. But she does. Okay? She does. She in her theological bent, she thinks that women are not allowed to preach and teach and be pastors and all of that. That is a problem. Okay? She needs to do more research on that, and that is your conscience. That is a problem. That is a problem. Going against something that you believe the Bible says. I did too. I did too in the past. My husband was of the opinion, I don't see a problem. And it was a biblical argument for him. And so in my mind, when I read the Bible, I was like, yeah, women are not allowed to do it. And so I said, okay, let's move on from that. That's my stand until God shows me otherwise. And so I continue reading and studying, and reading and studying and reading and studying some more. And I came to understand, oh, I got it because I didn't know what I didn't know. So if you don't know what you don't know about women in ministry, I'm going to put the link, the very first video that started to change my mind, plus another video with resources that you can look up yourself, read yourself, and make up your own mind. But the problem is, in her own mind, she believes she's not allowed to preach to a mixed audience. And that is a problem. That is a problem. Anyways, and her choice of people. I'm trying to here, I'll show you what the problem is. She's an angry cat. She comes to bother me. Every time I'm on my computer, she wants attention. Say hi. This is Lenny. Hi, Lenny. Actually, her name is Leonor. Some cat showed up in our lives, pregnant, and she's one of the litter. She's my baby girl. Yes. Okay. Bye. 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 She doesn't like to be held. Anyways, God bless. Read, study, make up your own minds. Okay. Bye. Bye.